And then we also have the bot music going on, so you guys can turn that off. Just right click her, or if you're on mobile, just hold it, and then yeah, it's just lo-fi music. It's just so I get distracted. Okay, well, I can at least send this. So today, if you read it or not, we will be starting with like the super basics. So today we're going to be focusing mainly on 2D and 3D shapes and how to put them together, and also how to... We're mainly going to focus on shading, because usually when you shade, you like leave room for lighting, if that makes sense. So we'll be focusing on how those things are lit. And I'd also like to preface this with, I'm not the best artist. I'm also... This class is basically me learning with you guys as well. So I'm not the best artist, but I'm also like learning this with you guys. But we already have, if you haven't seen before, we have the Sunday study links. The class is already set up. So I'll be focusing on week 7, which is values. Values is basically figuring out the darkest of darks and then like working your way up to lights, if that makes sense. So you're just kind of learning where to put the darks and like where to put the lights. And then we'll also be going into, if you guys can see all that in the links, there's a PDF folder, the PDF drawing books, and we'll kind of be going along the chapters of the one book. It's called Drawing for the Absolute and Utter Beginner by Claire Watson Garcia. We'll kind of be working our way through this a little bit, because it really does preface that you don't have to be a good artist at the beginning to learn. You can still like learn, like even without any knowledge, to like start with. So we'll be kind of going through that. And this book starts with a really nice section of shapes and how to shade different shapes and how to put those shapes together. So yeah. I've also got coffee, so if you hear me drinking every few seconds, it's that. So let me actually turn on my drawing program. So I'm gonna just explain my drawing program real quick. I use Clip Studio Paint. So I think, Kiwi, I think we will be transferring, if you read the announcement, I believe we're going to be transferring most of the drive into threads. So threads are basically sub-channels to a single channel in Discord. We'll try to keep the drive updated. So like, even if like you choose to leave in the future, which is perfectly fine, some people like grow out of here, the drive will still be updated, and you're welcome to share this with other people as well. And you can read this all on the drive as well. So we'll, like I said, we're mainly going to be focusing on the values. And then we have a folder for unsorted help as well. So it's like little things we just haven't made classes for yet. A good start to this class, and like every class we do, will be to warm up. I made this cute little, hold on, let me see if I can find it. This is my favorite little thing. See if I can. Oh no, it didn't work. Okay, hold on. This is my favorite. You gotta warm up before you draw. We're not gonna warm up today because shapes are a warm up. But it's super important to warm up before any kind of drawing, even if you're not even if you're just gonna study for the day, because it's very common in artists to develop like carpal tunnel and like wrist issues. So just drawing shapes at random, um, squiggle lines, even just like rotating your wrist or like stretching it on the wall. If you go into that drive, there's on the documents in each class, where the video links are, there's a whole section and a whole bunch of different links to show you how to warm up as well. But like I said, today we're doing shapes, which is a warm up of itself. So I'm gonna grab a pencil textured brush just for funsies. I should also say that this class is probably gonna be like about an hour. Hopefully, that's the goal. Like I said, I'm not very good at. I've never hosted a class myself before. It's always been Admin Rye, or we used to have other people to host classes that aren't here anymore, sadly. But this is my first class, and I hope we keep doing it together. So, can you tell I'm a little nervous? I own the server, and I'm nervous on hosting a class. So this is just for any of you guys working on an art program. I'm working on Clip Studio Paint right now, but you can work on obviously any art program. Any art program is fine. I'm working on a 2000 by 2000 canvas, and my DPI, dots per inch, is turned up to 350. So a good note is if you're struggling with getting your pieces to look like your lines to look crisp and like non-pixely, turn up your DPI. That's always going to be your issue most of the time. So even if we like go up into this corner, our lines are still crisp and straight. But I guess we'll just kind of go with it. So when I mean shapes, I mean absolute shapes. So, you know, circle, square. And I don't think I've met anyone who can do like perfect shapes, but that also comes with practice. So just like undoing is also man's best friend. It's not cheating to undo and redo, right? So these are just flat 2D shapes. Oh, I've got my hard brush, hard erase here too. So usually you're not going to be working with 2D shapes. Usually you're going to be working with 3D. But most of the time, you're not going to be able to tell if it's 2D or 3D unless it's like at an angle. And that's where your perspective lines come in, but we're not going to deal too much with like perspective today. But the point of the difference is the point of the difference is sometimes shading. So you see how the circle and the triangle, with the triangle you can make it 3D, but most of the time you don't work like this. Most of the time you work in like a cone when it comes to certain things. So the difference is obviously it's the shading. Oopsies, I'm on the wrong brush. So you can't really tell this is a sphere until you start shading it. And then if you're working in traditional, you would use your like finger or like a smudge tool for this. But in drawing programs, obviously you have your blending. And see, now you can tell it's a sphere. And like I said, you don't usually work in pyramids unless it's something specific. So usually you're working with a cone. And this is also why we have the book, because you can also go into that PDF and remember how to shade a cone. Sorry, I'm also a little sick still. Because sometimes it's just how it works. And I'm not trying to make these look perfect as well, so. See, now it's a cone. And the reason you kind of have to think about how your shapes shade and light is because in a second we're gonna put them together, we're gonna make something. So it's just really important that you know how these shapes work, because when you put them together, they'll all shade and light differently. And then obviously we're gonna... This is also where values come into play. So values is working in blacks, grays, kind of those midtones. There's absolutely no color that goes into it. See? Kind of like that. Obviously there's in-betweens. Like when you're drawing humans, you have like rim light, and like subsurface scattering. We're not really gonna do too much of that today because we're just trying to get, like, you know, the basics down. But you kind of see what I'm saying? There's just trying to figure out shapes. See words I don't know, look at that. For what, the subsurface scattering? That's we'll do that later. If you look at really nice pieces of humans and anthros, just really nice painted pieces, along the shadow you might see a thin line of like a warm tone color. That's subsurface scattering. So like if it would be like if I went to this circle right here and I just put this red right along the black. It's mainly for skin tones, so just keep that in mind. It's mainly for skin tones, but that would be subsurface scattering. But like I said, we're not gonna get into it too much today. Another note to keep in mind, if you want to think about... Yeah, that! Thank you. Yeah. It's just a really nice touch. It just helps a lot when you're, like, trying to bring more color or subtle color into your pieces. There's also something else you have to keep in mind when doing shading kind of like this, is bounce light. So even if there's hard shading on a shape, there's bounce light. So right along the bottom, usually like where your darkest dark would be, sometimes there's like a little bounce back. And a lot of the time it'll be in a color of that surface. But we're kind of focusing on just values today, because I feel like values kind of help you process things just a little bit easier without adding color into the mix. but a lot of these times it'll be in the shape of that shape, obviously. So with these in mind, I guess I can show you guys kind of how to put it together. Because you'll see in like drawing books. Here, let me see if I can. I'm gonna resize this so it's a little bit. Nope, never mind. I lied. In drawing books, a lot of the time, you'll see like do a sketch, draw your guidelines, and then usually with we're gonna do I don't know what species should we like do. We're gonna put it all together. We're gonna do an anthro, because just so you guys can see a little bit more shapes put together. Dog. So when it comes to a dog, most of the time you want a square muzzle. So the muzzle is usually a square. This is a little bit too big, hold on. And then, what are the ears? Triangles. Little triangles. Some people like to think of their ears as, pyramids. I kind of like to think of them as cones, because most ears, you know, they do the little curves, like, all around. So I kind of like to like them kind of like pyramids. I don't like to light them as pyramids. That was dumb. But obviously we have this circle right in the middle as well. We're not going to get too in detail with this dog. We're just kind of like shaping it out. But you see? Cone. And obviously it's not perfect shapes. It's mainly just how the shape kind of is. So you see the muzzle is flat for the most part, and then the face a little bit rounder, the ears just a little bit rounder. Ice cream cone. And obviously this works for items as well. We're kind of focusing on characters or like living creatures just because in the aspect of this server, I know that's mainly what everybody draws. And then we have cute little eyes. Eyeballs. Maybe not the pupils. We'll add some key features in so you guys can kind of like ramp, ramp, ramp. Dog. How does a box turn into a cylindrical shape, like a cylinder of short? Like, oopsies. A cylinder like this? So, it's kind of... In what aspect do you mean, though? So, if it comes to, like, shading, you kind of shade it like a circle. Just longer. If that makes sense. But it's really up to you. It really depends on the character, or just like what you're drawing. It really depends on your decision of what shapes you're gonna use. So for some species, like that's why I had you guys pick. For some species, like a cat, I wouldn't use a square for the muzzle. I would use a circle. Whee. And then some of the time, you would use kind of like a cone shape for a beak, if you were drawing a bird. But this is a dog, so we're using kind of a box. We'll go through another species if you want. But for the most part. And it also depends on science tip. Unless unique lighting applies, everything is always half lit. Yeah, for the most part. Tanuki. Tanukis would also be round-faced. Tanukis are so cute. So, kind of like what Rai said. Hold on, I'm actually gonna use an airbrush for this. So, kind of like, what we did for the box here. Let's say our lighting is coming from kind of like above this direction. We're going to, the shading's gonna be here. And then this is all gonna be kind of like mid-tone. But then you would have, it would be lighter up here. Whee! Sorry, I'm doing a really bad job at this. And then we go back to the circle, and it's the circle shades right here in a curved fashion. And then it lights curved. And then the cone back here. And it curves up here for shading, kind of straight. Yeah, so the good thing about learning your shapes is Sun Tzu. The good thing about learning your shapes is that everything is a shape, even when it's put together on a piece. So when you kind of understand how that shape, even when put together like this, if you understand how that shape shades, then you're usually good to go for the most part. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. And then this is right here. This only gets like the tiniest bit. So this is a separate shape, obviously. It's a little bit behind the head, so it wouldn't get lit all the way through. It would have a little bit of darkness right where this lighting is. So they're against each other. That's okay. And then the lighting gets and there you have a dog. And then, you know, obviously this isn't exact. You can put shading down here. You can put shading on the nose. The nose can also have a little bit of lighting up top. You can put lighting right here. But we're doing the basics, okay? We're doing basics today. Does anyone have any questions so far? Just to check in? We're probably gonna do a feline next just because someone asked. But I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. If you have any questions, just let me know right now. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee. And check my messages because someone pinged me. Okay. So now we're kind of gonna do a feline at Twist Requests. Felines, in my experience of like sketching and such, they're just all circles. It also, again, it really depends on what kind of feline you're doing. So let me do this actually. So if you're drawing like a house cat, oopsies. My hands are a little shaky. My room is very cold. So if you're drawing a house cat, you kind of have, oopsies, your circle muzzle, but you kind of have small triangle ears. The fun thing about learning about shapes in like different species as well is you can kind of see like what it's supposed to be as it goes, which is kind of cool. So like obviously this silhouette looks like a cat. But if you were to draw like when it comes to lions and tigers, pumas, that kind of stuff, they have small little circular ears, like half circle ears. So in the cartoon world, you know, bears usually have, but at the same time, they're kind of triangles as well. So this is where knowing your shapes come in. So we're actually, instead of doing full circles, we're actually gonna do a really like rounded triangle. So I know it's not the best art, obviously. Pug. So this would be like a tiger. And this is a house cat. But like I said, it's kind of just like knowing what your shapes are. Most cats have like heart-shaped noses. By the way, if you wanted to know. But it's all really round. Compared to, you know, wolves and dogs and stuff usually have square muzzles. Cats kind of have round. So again, you're shading with round. The good thing is when it usually comes to spheres, it's pretty straightforward. You know, honestly, most shapes are pretty straightforward. Which is really good. Semicircular dodecahedron? What is that? Is that an actual thing? Is that a circle? Is that what a circle or a sphere is called? A dodecahedron. Semicircular I'm gonna look it up. Hold on. Oh. This is so weird. Yeah, but they're flat. So even these can be lit and shaded properly. And I could show you, but it's a lot of faces. But obviously, most of the shapes we work in, they're not flat. And that's why it's really important for us to figure out what kind of shape they are and how that shape lights. Um, so even when it comes to back to the canine with the square, it's not always completely flat. So there's even a little bit of curve in it. So kind of like what Twist suggested earlier, you could light this like a cylinder. What if you draw flat faces? Well, part of the purpose of this is to help make faces not so flat. So even if we do a human face, I'm not used to drawing humans. I'm gonna attempt to do this. I'm not very good at humans, so just bear with me, guys. Well, we're just gonna do like a. So even if you do like something like this, and you have like your nose. This is a nose. Pretend it's a nose. Eyeball. Eyeball. The nose itself is a cylinder, kind of. It really depends on like what kind of nose you're drawing, but for the most part, it's a cylinder. So you would put the shading here, and then the nose gets lit here. But that's still a cylinder. I know, leave me alone. This is just for quick reference. And then obviously this guy has kind of a round jawline. So you would shade your jaw down here. But then his, leave me alone! His cheek would get lit up here. And then some people, you can also use blushing as shading as well, but we're gonna not work on that too much. You know what? I'm turning him off. You guys lost your privileges. His name is Frank. You lost your Frank privileges. But like even if you have like an anthro style like I do, um this is just kind of like a quick chibi sketch. Hold on, there's a reason I'm doing this. Just give me a second. Ears. Hate ears. You know what? It's a bear now. Okay. See, I'm the opposite way. I can draw humans semi-decent. Yeah, we're gonna work on oh my god, it is. We're gonna work on anatomy for different things in later classes. So we're gonna work on both humans and animals. Obviously, I'm not good at humans, so that's gonna be a good learning experience, and maybe we can get a few other like teachers to work on that with us. But then we'll also do feral and anthro classes as well, so we can kind of cover all of our bases. And then, yeah, Shibs is really good with anatomy. So is Kit Kat. I was hoping Kit Kat would host a class, but I don't know how they feel about that. You don't have to talk or anything either. You could just help us with resources. The reason I did this was because I wanted to show you everything has a shape, which means that everything has a lighting anatomy to it. Let me clean this up just a little bit so you can see what I mean a little bit better. So the reason I did a sketch like this, our bear is gonna look a little funky in a minute, but trust me, trust the process. Well, don't trust my process, but trust a process. So, so everything has, I'm shit at teaching, honestly. That's fine. I mean, we have other people, like, we might have, hopefully Fab might do a class. I'd love for some of our, like Jenna to do an anthro class, because Jenna works primarily in rounded triangles, which is amazing. Because that kind of shape, kind of like, hold on. Also, Clip does this thing where it has to load every, like, 30 minutes. It sucks. Kind of like rounded triangles like this. Those are great shapes, because, like, this could be a paw right now. And then if you flip it upside down, rounded triangle, it's a nose. It's not an autosave, it's like a crash backup kind of thing. I don't know, it's weird. Back to class. Everything has a shape. So, like, we're gonna do some cheek fluff real quick. I like shapes. It has to be perfect. I don't. We can do mouth and teeth. That's a that would be a good class. So this is cheek fluff. And obviously it's a little swoopy. And like different angles. But obviously you get the gist. But can you see what shape it is? That's right, it's a triangle. And it lights that way too. Or shades that way, I should say. So, like, even fur. So, even fur has a shading and lighting anatomy. And obviously these aren't, there's, obviously there's shade down here as well. Underneath. So where items overlap, obviously there's shading there as well. So like this cheek would overlap and cast some shadows as well. And that kind of comes in with how objects interact with each other. You're gonna kill me, is what's gonna happen. I gotta look this up. Oh god. So the fun thing about learning about shadows is that you'll learn that there's multiple types. So something I do is, let me see, actually let me open up a piece. Maybe I can show you guys. And then I'll kind of do a little bit of mouth stuff. Or we'll do mouth stuff another day. I'm trying to find a nice piece that'll work for it. I think I might have merged all these layers. What do you mean? I just want to open it. I might have merged all these layers, hold on. I merged all these. Hold on. Okay, actually, I didn't merge all of these. Eyeballs. Okay. So this is before it's painted, obviously. So, I gotta turn all this lighting off. Okay. So this is one shading layer. And I kind of call this my, I know, Avalis have pure black eyes. They're really hard to like do. This was my first time painting them, so I was like, we'll work on that later. But this is what I would call, this is purple. It's a little bit of purple. It's on a linear burn layer. But it's what I would call the contouring shade. There's another term for it, I just can't think of it right now. But it's like, it blocks out how the shapes look. So you can kind of see the drawing's a little flat. So instead of Mother Say, we should call it Jesus. Professor. It's flat, and then we add this first layer of shading, and it kind of makes the shapes. Usually I would turn it down a little bit, but this was supposed to be like a really loud painting, so it's all the way up. And then above that we have, this is blue, and this is what I call the pure shadows. It's where most of the shapes were overlapping. So in terms of value, it's what you would call, it would be the pure black. But in most pieces you won't be using black, by the way. Most things are off shades, and we'll do lighting in another class, but we have a really good PDF book in that folder. Rymo actually suggested it to me, and she actually gave me the book when she got it. Color and Light, A Guide for the Realistic Painter by James Gurney, creator of Dinotopia, I might add. That is a really good book for learning how color relates with light and shadow. So a lot of people will tell you to do your shadows in either like cooler tones, like purples and blues, which is totally okay. But you'll learn that you can have warm shadows, but your lighting will be cool. So usually when your shading is cool, you'll have warm shadows, or warm lighting, sorry. If you have cool shadows, you have warm lighting. But you can have cold lighting, and then you would have warm shadows. But it's also finding that color mix. It doesn't have to be pure anything. Some people like to work on their paintings completely in value, which is black and white, black, grays, and white. And then when they go into the rendering process, they'll color it back through. But that's something we'll focus on in the future as well. We'll probably in the future do like a full rendered black and white piece, and then learn how to do that process and all that stuff. But right now we're kind of just focusing on the shapes. So like I said, this just like contouring and then like pure shadows, but that's just to kind of say that there's different types. And then obviously I had my light layer, and then this is like even some light detailing. But the important thing is, after all of this, it was painted into that. So it's really just learning what your shapes are. That was Frank for a second. And then down here. So drawing shapes, I assume, is part of the overall sketching process. Sketching is what I struggle most with. Yes, it is. So if you, obviously I'm a little bit more developed artist, so my sketching process is slightly quicker than most. Give me something you want to draw, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll try and go a little bit slower, and like a deer. So for most things that I do, I start with a circle. And it's like I said, it's okay to like redo stuff. Like a lot of artists like feel like they need to get it perfect on the first try. No, just redo it. And I always do a cross section with a vague general idea of where you want them to go. And what I'm actually gonna do real quick is I'm actually gonna find a reference image. References are your best friend. Like, completely. So if we... Let me find a good one. We'll just go with this one. Copy image. Put it in there. It's probably gonna be too big, so I might have to resize this. Yeah, okay. It's a little bit too big. So this is... Oopsies. Actually, you know what? Not even gonna do that. We're gonna make this big. We are going to... Whee! His name is Craig. We're gonna lower the opacity a little bit. And we are actually going to shape this out on the program itself. Because perfectionists want to make everything perfect and I gotta learn. Yeah. When we do anatomy, hopefully anatomy is gonna be our next in our next few lessons. We're gonna figure out we're gonna do, what are they called? Shoot, what are they called? They're like the websites that we go on, and there's like you get like 30 seconds to like sketch it out really quick. The motion drawings or whatever. We're gonna learn how to be confident, kind of the shapes, the looseness, and getting less perfection and more like looseness in our drawings and quickness kind of is confidence in our art as well. So I want to mention this now just because we're on the topic. Quick evidence. When we do study, I find a lot of people find it hard to study because they work so much with their own characters. And when you do studies, you kind of don't work with your own characters. It's kind of just like a faceless body. But if you want to do studies before our next class, because I don't even know what our next class is going to be yet. Hopefully we'll announce it in the next few days. But if you want to study anatomy before the next class, specifically for humans, I find that thinking about the person as like, hi Moon, you're a little late. That's okay, I recorded this whole thing. I find that thinking of the person as like a spider Sona, like a Spider-Man character, kind of helps with that because it encourages you to practice a little bit more, because then it's like a character and you are okay with drawing them in like those dynamic anatomy poses, rather than, because I know a lot of people struggle with practicing just because it's not a character of their own, so why would I want to draw them? But obviously you need to practice just a little bit to get better. So maybe we'll all make spider sonas together when we're learning how to do anatomy stuff. That'll be fun. Okay, but back to the actual thing we were doing. Moon, you're right in time. We're gonna learn how to, we're gonna break down this deer on Judas's request in shapes. So, like I was saying before, you kind of start with your circle, and then you do your... These are crosshairs. They can be flat. Even when working in 3D, you're okay with doing stuff flat. You can put it in flat. I like to do it curved just a little bit. It helps my head a little bit more. When it comes to the ears, I know it doesn't completely look like it, but these are cones. So these are kind of cones. And then you kind of do the base. And kind of what Twist suggested earlier, this is a tapered cylinder. So this is a cylinder. And then this cheek is a little bit rounder. Cylinders. Yeah, so you can have cylinders. You can, alternatively, think of this as a cylinder, or not cylinder, a cone as well. Can I have that deer image? Yes, you can. You can also think of this as a cone as well, that's just like cut off. That's also another way to think of cylinders. Here, hold on, let me get this deer image for you guys. I didn't even think of sending it in the chat, that's my bad. So this is the deer we're working on. I mean, cylinders are really versatile. Really, all of these shapes are versatile. You can change the way they look too. So like tapering as well. And then we're gonna go back to these ears. Obviously, I said they were cones. It's perfect. Don't let them tell you any different. Also, that's a good, excuse me, I just burped. But, that's a good concept as well for the head base to be a cone. And then you can work your way out like that as well. That's actually good too. So everyone has their process differently. Obviously that's not a deer nose. Everyone works differently. And when it comes to, we were working on felines earlier, a lot of people don't even work in circles. Sometimes they just work with the raw shapes. So some people like to do their cat heads like this. And then you stick the ears on. Some people like to do that. So in these classes as well, yeah, stylization. That's perfectly fine. But through these classes, obviously, I'm doing the way I stylize and like how I know to do things. So trying new things and like doing things, and we'll definitely get into this a lot more when we do anatomy, because some people love to do torsos like this. And then you have your arm, your hips. I don't do that. I do the good old-fashioned ribcage method, arm, yeah, kind of stuff. Obviously it's not good, but but like I said, learning the basics helps a lot when it comes to picking your own style. So we have big ears. It's an eyeball. But when it comes to the ears, you're confused, but you get it. That was mainly just like comments on stylization, like Kit Kat said. Do you have questions? Because I can go back over it. This was kind of just... This is kind of like a cylinder as well. When it comes to deers, you kind of have to chop out little sections of their ears. But it all works together. This would be considered feral, yeah. So feral, the difference, I can explain it real quick. The difference between feral and human or furry is feral is purely animal. Anthropomorphic is like a mesh between human and feral. So it's usually animals on two legs. And then feral also has like subcategories like digigrade and then plantigrade. But we digigrade is like the back legs are feral but they're still standing on 2 legs. And then plantigrade is human legs, but they're still paws. And then obviously human is human. And then you can stylize feral all, like, I'm sure you know that all. But tracing real life, and this is how we're going to study anatomy as well. So we're kind of just working in shapes right now, and like how shapes are lit and shaded. But this is basically how you break it down. So we saw the tapered sphere. We have just a, not sphere, I'm stupid, tapered cylinder. And then the cones up here. And then the circles. And then this is actually a cylinder as well. A flan. I love flan. It tastes good. And then I've been using an airbrush for the shading, for anyone wondering. So our cylinder would be shaded down here. And then we'd put a little bit of shading under the chin because these objects overlap. You would shade right here for the cylinder. And then just a little bit down here. This is a circle, so you shade right here. And obviously we're doing the lighting coming down this way. And this is shaded right here because that's where the head is, so it's an object overlapping. And then this is a cone, so you shade right here. This is a cone, so you shade a little bit right here. And then you light. This is a circle, you shade up here. This is a cone, you shade right here. Shade a little bit right here too for the nose. Cone. And this cylinder right here, you can shade or light, you can light right up here. And because it's such a large surface, you can also just bring it in a little bit. And obviously you would change the values a little bit, and like Rai mentioned earlier, everything is kind of half shaded all the time. So you could like blend this out and then blend out the lighting, and they can kind of like meet in the middle just a little bit. This would probably be a little bit less light. I just pressed a little bit too hard. But that's basically a deer. I'm actually going to raise this up a little bit. The lighting is different on the deer than what we shaded ourselves. I will mention that now. But we'll also have a lighting class as well. We'll study a whole bunch of light anatomy. Is there anything else you guys want me to cover or try and go over? Do you guys have any questions? Light does have anatomy. And when I say light anatomy, it's kind of more along the lines of what we're covering right now, like in shapes. So we're doing our lighting this way. Son of a gun. So our light's coming from this way. I fucked up. But when we go to this picture, the light is actually coming from, it's coming from this way, and there's lighting coming from this way, and there's a little bit of lighting coming from this way, and there's some coming from behind, because obviously it's the sun. So it's kind of like the process of like rim lighting. So actually, I'm going to do this in another color so you guys can see. So there's lighting basically all around this deer. So this is me marking everywhere the lighting is on this deer. So all of that blue is light. And there's a little bit, because bounce lighting right down here. That's all light. It's coming from everywhere, basically. So we'll do a whole session on shadows and lights because it gets really detailed, especially when you start adding in like the subsurface scattering, like I said at the beginning, and then the bounce light, you know, the shaping shadows, and then like the true shadows. There's just a lot you can do with it. And a lot of fun colors, I gotta say. There's a lot of fun coloring you can do. Um, there's a little bit of light above the eye, on the eye. I feel like we're just coloring like a persona right now. But yeah. Like I said, if you guys are in the position to practice a little bit more this week, the light and color book, the PDF in the Sunday study folder, I'll repost it at the end of class. But it's up if you scroll up a little bit. There's a PDF in there. It's a whole book. But that covers a lot of the light and shading when it comes to colors as well. But yeah, this is our pretty deer with his shapes. And like you said, Judas, you can do a rough shape sketch on top of any kind of pose or like anatomy you need. And then you can always go back and do a second sketch and like detail things out. Specifically like with this deer, obviously we didn't do the ears perfectly. You would like curve it in a little bit. Add some fluff here and there. The cheek had a little bit of fluff. You have your nose. He looks like a smiley face. Deer also have like little jaws. Eyeball. It's perfect. But yeah, any questions? For the most part, we're done. It's been like an hour, a little bit over an hour. I know, it really did. But we'll be setting up the thread for this class in the next, hopefully very soon. So I'll put down values, shapes. I'll relink the book as well. So, and I'll also post this recording. So you guys can go back and like visually see things again. I'll find more examples, and try to find more human related examples because I know we've been working a lot with animals, and I know we will continue working a lot with animals, but we'll be learning humans together through most of this as well. Oh yeah, Rai wants to do a class on perspective and shoot, what does she call it? Like laying out. Yeah, there you go. KitKat's got it. Humans. Yeah, so figuring out shapes is very helpful. Like obviously you can tell it's a deer. Like that's like even with 4 shapes. We drew 4 shapes on this deer originally. Obviously not anymore. Originally we drew 4 shapes on this deer. 2 cones, a circle, and then another a cylinder. And it looks like a deer. So it's really just practicing to get the shapes that you want as well. Because I think before this, I've only ever drawn 1 deer. I should say this now, just because we're in a class that's for beginners. I know you're probably sick of hearing this, but practice is key. Even outside of class, you should be drawing a lot, even if it's just random stuff. Like if you find just a random animal, just practice. Part of this lesson is to teach you the best ways to practice as well. So it's kind of putting you in a direction of how to practice without just telling you just practice. Obviously we do the draw alongs almost every single day. Someone does. So that's good too. For some reason I really want to get good at drawing antlers. Antlers are great. Antlers are so much fun. The bot left? What the hell? She said she was done. She was over it. But antlers are technically just a whole bunch of cones. Well, we're ending class anyways, so I guess it makes sense. I'm actually gonna end the recording right now.